Hello, hello, it's open here. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? I was waiting for you to call me. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, testing. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. Testing. Testing. Hello, I'll sing a song this morning to see if you can hear me this morning. Hello, hello.
Bom dia! Sejam todos muito
Good
bem-vindos
morning.
à Casa do
Welcome
Seguro,
to
a
Casa do
COP30,
Seguro
o
at
hub
COP30,
estratégico
the
do seguro,
strategic hub
conexão
of content,
empresarial e negócios,
entrepreneur
criado para
connections, and
promover o
business
papel do
to
setor de
promote
seguros
the
na
role of
transição
the
climática.
insurance sector
Meu
in the
nome é
climate
Gabriel Pinheiro
transition. My name is
e
Gabriel
já
Pinheiro,
agradeço a
and I
presença
thank you
de
very much
todos.
for your presence here.
Durante todos os dias de
During
programação,
every single
vamos
day of the
receber
programming,
autoridades
we will have
governamentais,
government
lideranças
authorities,
empresariais, além de
leaderships, company
representantes de
leaderships,
organizações
besides
internacionais.
representatives from international
Todas as sessões vão
organizations.
fazer
All
tradução
sessions will
simultânea.
have
Os
simultaneous
fones de ouvido
translation.
estão
The
disponíveis
phones
na
are
entrada da plenária.
available at the
Fiquem
entrance
à
of the plenary
vontade para
session.
retirar os
Feel
seus
free to get
antes
yours
do início das
before the
atividades.
beginning of the
A programação
activities.
completa da
The
Casa do
full
Seguro na
program of
COP30
Casa do
pode ser
Seguro
acessada
at
diretamente
COP30
no
can
site
be accessed in our site
www.casadoseguro.org.br
or through the
Bem aí
QR
no
code
centro do
at,
telão.
at the screen
O
that you can see at
grupo
the screen
de
here.
empoderadores da
The
casa é
empowering
formado por
group is
empresas que
formed by
desempenham um papel
companies
relevante
which
na
have a
transição
key role
climática,
in the
com
climate
contribuições
transition
concretas
with
para a
concrete
agenda
contributions
ESG.
to the ESG
Nesta manhã,
agenda.
a
This
programação de
morning,
abertura será
the
da
opening
AXA, que
program will be
apresentará
from
debates
AXA that will
sobre o
present
papel dos
debates
seguros
about the
na
role of
competitividade
insurance
de
in the
preço global
compensation of
e
greenhouse
protegendo a
effect gases,
natureza e
protecting
as
nature
pessoas.
and people.
Convido a todos a
I
assistirem
invite
ao vídeo do
everyone to
nosso
watch the
empoderador.
video from our Empower.
O primeiro painel da
The
manhã
first
tem
panel
como
of the
título
morning
Acelerando a Transição
has
Climática: o
as
papel da tecnologia verde
theme
e
accelerating
segura
the climate
para
transition, the
atingir
role of
net
green
zero.
technology
O
and
painel
insurance to
abordará o
reach net
panorama da
zero.
transição
The panel
econômica,
will
da
approach the
tecnologia
panorama of the
resiliente e
economic
de baixas
transition for
emissões,
a
trazendo o
resilient
papel das
economy
inovações
of low
climáticas e
carbon,
de
bringing the role of
sustentabilidade
climate
para
innovations and
acelerar a
sustainable
transição,
investments to accelerate
destacando o
the
papel do
transition,
setor de seguros em
highlighting the
viabilizar
role of the
e
insurance
adaptar
sector
a
in
esses
making it
esforços.
possible and scaling those efforts.
Convido agora ao
I
palco
invite onto the
Shauki
stage
Butahuit,
Shauki
head de
Butahuit,
sustentabilidade da AXA
Sustainability
International
Head from
Markets.
AXA International Markets. Alexandre
diretor de
Mansur,
projetos do Mundo
Project
que Queremos.
Director of The World
Comecem
That
com uma
We
salva de
Want, O Mundo
palmas.
que Queremos. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Daniel Contrucci,
Daniel Contrucci,
cofundador e
co-founder and
co-CEO da Climate
co-CEO of
Ventures.
Climate Ventures. Fernanda Gomes,
gerente de gestão do
Manager
conhecimento
of
e
Knowledge
comunicação do
Management
Instituto
and Communication
Internacional para a
Management from the
Sustentabilidade.
Instituto Internacional para a Sustentabilidade, the International Institute for
Rogério Paiva
Sustainability, Rogério
Cavalcante,
Paiva
presidente do
Cavalcante,
conselho do 1,5
President
Grau.
of Grau e Meio. And then I would like to remind you that this session is being transmitted live on CNseg on YouTube or on Casa do Seguro site. This session also counts on simultaneous translation. I wish you all a great panel.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you all for being with us today. I'm Chauki, so I'm leading sustainability at AXA International Markets, and I'm pleased to welcome my fellow experts to discuss this important topic of climate transition, especially the role of green technology and insurance to achieve net zero. Before moving forward and having a thorough conversation for less than an hour with our panelists, I'd like to set the scene and to understand a little bit more what we understand first about green technology and what insurance, how insurance can play a vital role on this topic. So green technology is now central to the efforts when we need to achieve climate transition. This going through different ways. We'll see later on. This going either through developing new solutions who have an impact on the environments. It could be also managing commodities in different ways. It could be also managing the supply chain in different ways, and we'll see that later on with Alexandre. But my point is that when we talk about green technology, we refer to solutions who help to have a more sustainable world and also have a long-lasting impact on the ecosystem we're living in. And today, I believe that all of our panelists are playing this role. They all share an important role in making sure that knowledge is turned into action and that the solution they ever support or create have an impact on the ecosystem, whether in Brazil or elsewhere. So I'm very pleased to be joined today by Alexandre, who is project director at Mundo que Queremos, which is basically working a lot right now on deforestation-free supply chain, and we'll share more about it later. I'm also pleased to welcome Daniel Contrucci, the co-founder and CEO of Climate Ventures, which is a leading climate platform, which helps to scale innovative solutions to achieve regenerative and net zero economy. So happy to have you, Daniel. Fernanda Gomez from the International Institute of Sustainability, pronounced it in English, who is a non-profit private organization which also free for developing more nature-based solutions to protect the ecosystem and also drive economic growth. And finally, Rogério with us today, who is co-founder of Grau Meio, if I'm correct in my Portuguese, working also a lot on prevention, on using AI and technology to prevent wildfire, which is something important, especially for the region we are here. So maybe to kickstart the conversation with our fellow panelists, I start with you, Daniel. As you're leading a platform which helps, scale innovation on the sustainable environment and also provide, the tools to accelerate net zero economy and regenerative growth. How do you see, from your point of view, the rise of green technology in building a clear pathway in Brazil and in Latin America to improve, or at least to reach the targets, of net zero in the coming years? What do you see also we are still fronting as a barrier? What are the blockers we're blocking, us right now?
Thank you very much for the invitation, for being here, for AXA Insurance, and for this beautiful insurance house here at COP. Congratulations for the initiative. So I'm Daniel Contrucci. As you mentioned, I started Climate Ventures together with my business partner in 2018. So it's been a 7-year journey, and we started with a clear motivation. We understand that climate change came and it's the biggest threat and challenge of our generation, and many things need to happen. We started to look at the solutions. So we pretty much started to map in the different sectors of the economy, and according to Brazil's national determined contributions, what are the main challenges we face in terms of decarbonizing the economy. And we look at the main sectors. So in Brazil, as many might know, we have about 2/3 of our emissions coming from land use and also expansion of agribusiness. So the deforestation, changes in land use and expansion of food production are responsible for nearly 2/3 of our emissions. And then, of course, other important sectors such as energy, such as logistics and mobility, water, sanitation, biofuels. So we started to map which are the priority solutions in each of these areas that can actually contribute to decarbonize these main sectors. And since then, we have mapped more than 1,500 solutions, such as Grau e Meio, which is one of our enterprises that we promote, bringing these solutions. And out of these 1,500 solutions, I understand that technology plays a very important role in different ways. So before talking about the obvious technologies, right? We think about technology, we think about AI, we think about drones and sensors that are bringing a lot of solutions. But before that, I think it's very important to remember that there are different types of technology that we also recognize and promote in climate ventures. Some of these technologies, we're talking about ancient technologies in terms of how to deal with nature. So we really need to recognize the importance of indigenous communities and the traditional knowledge, especially here in the Amazon. Worldwide, it's not natural that people can live in harmony within nature. So most of the cities, especially in the developed world, we have a lot of people that consider that nature is a place where we go spend our time in vacation. We preserve the parks and we remove people outside. So we need to respect the ancient technologies that these communities have, also social technologies that help us to scale the solutions. Because when we think about the scale of the problem, there will not be a single organization as powerful, as rich as it is, to actually find solutions for these main challenges. So we need to work together and we need to orchestrate multiple solutions that can work in the landscape. So the ability to actually coordinate and make systemic investments and applying different solutions to tackle climate change is key. So Climate Ventures work now as a think and do tank. So we produce knowledge about these main sectors and solutions, and we also promote coordinated efforts, especially around the nature-based solutions and bioeconomy. So this is where most of our focus is. And we believe that right now, also with the rise of AI, and also I would say that about 30% of these 1,500 solutions are technology intensive solutions, startups that bring many different sorts of solutions, for example, to diagnose floods, diagnose disasters and fires, also solutions to increase the efficiency of production and reduce the amount of external inputs for many different cultures in Brazil, and technologies that help us understand how we can expand food production. Brazil is one of the world leaders in food production. We need to do this in ways that we sustainably manage the land, and so how we can integrate livestock with crop productions, with forestry productions in an integrated way. So we also believe that these ways of producing using, for example, sustainable agroforestry are also different sorts of technologies that we are experimenting, and different than computer technologies. These technologies demand the nature time to evolve and show that it's also a profitable way that can really promote nature conservations in Brazil and beyond. So I will stop here so we can have time to listen to other panelists, and we continue to talk about the importance of the insurance in this new market.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Indeed, you share with us a large panorama of what currently, the whole green technology industry in Brazil is doing. And moving to maybe Fernanda, as you mentioned, nature-based solution. We know that your institute is working a lot on this topic and to reduce as much as possible environmental disaster risk through that. Can you tell us a little bit more, based on what Daniel shared, how NBS, nature-based solution, can, be implemented and have an impact, both on nature and people right now.
Thank you, Choki. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Yes, we have to look at nature-based solutions, not only as adaptation or mitigation strategies, but as a holistic solution that can address both environmental, social, and economic challenges. And for do that, the planning and designing is key. So for instance, at IIS, we develop a framework to guide stakeholders from the private insurance sector where to invest to maximize the return, financial return, but also the social environment return as well. So we combine complex ecological data and future land use and future climate scenario maps and social vulnerability indicators as well to identify areas where to implement nature-based solutions like restoration, conservations that could maximize their return. So for that, we are talking about transforming nature-based solutions in infrastructure and not only see them as isolated conservation and restoration activities. For that, we need a combination of science, policy, and business. And when we talk about co-benefits of nature-based solutions, is actually integrating the efforts to maximize, make them intelligence, especially intelligence, socially inclusive, and financially viable.
Thank you very much. To reflect a little bit on the solution you have been working on, I'd like to make maybe a perfect segue to Rogerio, who's basically working on also nature conservation and preventing wildfire, with using technology, data, AI to maximize this. So Rogerio, can you tell us a little bit more about the technology you have been developing and also the impact that you are now seeing in the management of forest, management of wildfire in Brazil? Can you share us a little bit more about what you're currently doing?
Claro, grande prazer estar aqui presente. Agradeço o convite. Primeiramente, gostaria de falar
I thank you for the invitation. First of all, I'd like to say that we act on a very specific topic, which is fires, forest fires. And just to give you a dimension of the size of these forest fires, they represent 30% of the world emissions, because you just imagine they talk a lot about restoration, forestry. When there is a fire, it is the same as having a CO2 bomb. So everything that you have been preserving is burned. So besides the emission through the fire, that biome stops capturing carbon. So we are talking about a very long-term loss. What is a degree and a half? A degree and a half is a translation to English, where we bring our purpose to prevent the earth from heating up a degree and a half. And how did we do that? We created 8 years ago a solution that detects a fire in less than 3 seconds. How do we do that? We implemented cameras, high-resolution cameras on monitoring towers, existing towers already. These cameras, they have an algorithm and they can detect any signal of smoke 20 kilometers far. So just for you to have an idea, we are talking about 120,000 hectares. So a degree and a half is 1.5 years old. We have monitored 20 million hectares in Brazil. It's the size of the United Kingdom. For a Brazilian startup, I think it is a very attractive number. And our clients nowadays, we have 2 different segments which are very important and which are highly impacted by fires, which are the agribusiness and The environmental business. In the agro business in 2024, we had catastrophes in terms of fires, mostly in the south region. Our clients reported a reduction of more than 80% of their losses due to fires. And you don't have to be a specialist to understand that any fire, when they start, it can be put out just by stepping on it, because they all start very small. So what is the difficulty? The detection capacity. So the sooner you detect that, the better you can combat it, and of course, the less loss you will have. So these are basic elementary questions, and of course, the platform has evolved. It started as just with the detection, and then it continued advancing to have a forecast for risk, where we measure the risk daily, going through detection instantaneously or satellite. And here, just a brief explanation. When you talk about satellite detection, we think of the images, right? The satellite going in, zooming in. No, that exists only for war. We don't have that for sustainability as well. Satellites detect points of heat depending on a geographic size. So 6 hours of fire is hell, hell. I don't know if you have seen this, but I guarantee that it's very similar to hell. High temperature, and there is this platform exactly to give some conditions. And in this evolution, we evolved to a fire propagation where we can cross meteorologic data, wind data, to be able to know what is the behavior of this fire in time and space. Why? Because an open sky fire that we call, they are enormous areas. It will take hours for you to reach the focus of the fire. So if we have a propagation system that can identify the behavior of the fire in time and space, you can reduce the time to reach the main focus. And we have an opportunity that I would like to bring here, which is being launched here, which is the TRFF. This has been led by the Brazilian government. It is the union of the 70 countries which have tropical forests, and they are launching a bond that will reach $125 billion to be applied on projects of preserving the forests. And I haven't heard anyone talking about insurance in that operation. So I would like to bring to this hub as well. I think we are facing a great opportunity here, because TFF will reimburse each country $4 by hectare that is preserved, and it will discount $400 by hectare that has been deforested. So 1 to 100. I think this would be an interesting object for an insurance.
Thank you for the call to action from the local Brazilian insurance company. I guess you are the perfect place in Casa de Seguros to be listened to my colleagues and also my fellow colleagues from other companies. As we're talking about forest deforestation, the impact of wildfire, I'm turning to Alexandre. As Alexandre has been working a lot through the initiative of Radar Verde to assess the transparency of meat companies, beef companies in the supply chain. So you have been doing a great work on that. And as you know, that cattle is one of the first reasons for deforestation in the region, cattle, cattling. So I'd like to know how this initiative could have, an impact for other companies in other sectors. Have you seen, transfer mechanism? Have you seen a reaction from other industries when you launched Radar Verde recently?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, we developed Radar Verde 6 years ago, and since then, well, let me explain to you what is it. Cattle is responsible for more than 0.5% of Brazilian emissions. It emits more than everything: energy, transportation, and even agriculture itself. That's because of deforestation associated with cattle production. We don't need to cut forests to produce meat, but to change that, it's a huge challenge. And to help it, we develop a methodology to evaluate all companies each year. So we rank all mid companies. There are 151 companies this year, and all supermarket chains in Brazil also, to evaluate how much do they control their supply chain to avoid deforestation. Each year we give a rate, a number to the capacity of each company control the last farm and all other farms in the systems. And this is Radar Verde, and this is already being used by companies to know how do they fare. This is already being used by investors, because we have investors choosing by, let me show it to you. We have released it 2 weeks ago. This is this year rank. This is among the all meat companies. These are the ones that fare best. They are the only ones that have any control of the last farm where the cattle spend 3 months. And as you can see, no one have yet control of the other farms where the cattle spend 90% of its life. All other companies have no control whatsoever. This is the only 3 supermarket chains that have control of the last farm. All other supermarkets don't have any control today. We have the rate that can help people to develop policies. So we have companies developing policies according to that rate to prioritize who is faring better, to ask for targets of improvement, to monitor if the company is improving. We have a group of investors buying shares of own companies, activist investors buying shares from meat companies and asking them to improve. Looking at this indicator, we are talking a lot with Chinese buyers, European buyers, American buyers, and they are going to start using this as an indicator as well. This is a way to avoid risk, because regulation is becoming increasing strict with that, and to avoid the risk of companies losing value because it is blocked on markets for exportation. So it's a way to avoid risks when you choose shares or invest in debt by this company, and it's also a way to drive change, of course. So we develop a methodology to evaluate that. We check if they are really doing what they promise. This is not based on promise by companies. They have to prove they're doing so, and that's it. We are doing it each year, and we are hoping to help other companies to use it. It's free. It's all the methodology is free and public, and we are helping to spread this information to make it more useful.
Thank you very much. Maybe one extra question. Are you facing right now a couple of challenges to make this tool, which is free and open source, adopted by mid companies? Do you have any feedback from the market beyond the free companies you mentioned? What's the state of play right now in the sector?
Right now, the companies that fare better they are looking at it, and some of them are even commemorating, celebrating. But there are companies that were not in that list of the best ones, and they are starting to answer the questionnaires, pay attention to the methodology. They're starting to be close to us and help with the benchmarks.
Okay, so you managed to get them on board, which is perfect. We have discussed, through our panelists, the role and impact of green solution, green technology, whether it's about the meat supply chain, whether it's about protecting the system, supporting innovation from these new tech companies, and also working on preventing wildfire. But we didn't mention a lot apart from a couple of discussion and points that you mentioned, Rogelio, about the role of the insurance industry. So insurance is also critical, you know, to accelerate the climate transition because it provides a push to adopt sustainable practices as you're doing. It also provides risk management tool as you're also developing and give access to capital. So if we have now a clear path to achieve net zero in the coming years, and or at least to commit to what we shared in different COPs, how do you see from your tech point of view or from your, let's say, non-insurance background, the role of insurers, you know, into that space? So maybe Daniel, as we discussed that before, can you tell us how do you see the role of insurance, especially when you're working with all these climate tech companies and supporting them? Do you see that they are playing a critical role? They're doing enough? What's your view on that?
Yes. So I think this is a critical moment because every time that we are ahead of a new market, right? This new market is full of uncertainties. So we are in a moment which is critical for nature's agenda in Brazil. We need to prove that we have different ways of using the land in a more sustainable way. And right now, we are facing huge challenges in terms of measuring and precifying risks associated to these activities. So I'll give you one example, which is the example that we are deeply engaged, which is the Nature Investment Lab is an initiative that we coordinate. It's an initiative by BNDES together with Banco do Brasil, also with GFANS, Instituto Itaúsa, and Instituto Clima e Sociedade, who gathered and are promoting solutions to unlock finance for nature-based solutions in Brazil. So we've been working with this lab for more than 1 year now. And in this first year, we one of the task forces of the lab is focused on innovative transactions. So we opened a public call. We received more than 80 enterprises that were looking to scale their solutions and are facing challenges to fundraise. And we select 5 of these companies. These 5 companies together are raising about $75 million. So they are companies that already operate in 1,000, 2,000 acres of land, are looking now to expand their operations to 10, 20,000 acres. And they are working, for example, in cultures such as macaúba. So macaúba is one of the most abundant palm trees we have here in Brazil, and it produces a very high quality oil that can be used as a source of food. So it can substitute palm oil for the food industry, but it also works as biofuel. So it's a huge promising industry in Brazil. We have also been supporting operations of Silvic Pastoril, so integrating cattle ranching with forestry and land and crops. So these solutions are solutions that are trying to access funding, for example, for the climate fund. They have already passed through all the scrutiny of the climate fund demands, but when they are approved, but they need to show, a sort of guarantee to access the funding. They have not been able to do so. So we have only large companies such as Suzano now accessing climate fund, which is great. But the companies that are looking to restore degraded lands with solid business models, they have not being able to show that they can manage the risks safely. So the role of insurance is critical for that. And in these terms, I think that we need to work together with the insurance sector, because most of the available insurance nowadays for agribusiness do not cover these innovative business models. And so We have, of course, is no secret that the agribusiness works with insurance really well to protect crops, to protect from disasters. But when we talk about these new models that we are trying to promote, we still do not have many solutions. So we are inviting international companies and banks to work together with us. And I think especially in these next 5 to 10 years, which is where the green solutions in nature-based solutions need to scale, we'll definitely need to work closer with the insurance world to understand and generate science and data to actually know about the risks, and so we can pricify them correctly and unlock investments for this new business model. So
thank you very much. It's indeed, I think, a critical point to have insurers able to adapt also the solution to what currently the green technology providers are doing. So, and this reflects what maybe you shared with us, Fernanda, as regards to the nature-based solution. Do you see interest from the finance industry to use your framework? How do you want to unlock, access, to more people, more land to be protected by that? How do you see the role of finance and insurance, regarding your work?
Oh, thank you. Just one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning.
Yeah.
IIS is a non-for-profit a private institution, and we are funded by this research we did was funded by the insurance sector, by AXA and Swiss Re. So that's answers a bit of our questions.
Yeah.
So we see an interest in the insurance sector in nature-based solutions for mitigating risk. I have just a bit of advertising. I have some bits, some copies of this decision-making framework we developed. I can give at the end, and that's exactly what Daniel was saying in the beginning. Identify where to best invest, how to maximize the benefits to, for example, reduce flood risk, cooling urban environments, protecting coastlines. So we can maximize the investments and reducing lower claims in the future, for example. So it's designed for the insurance sector specifically. How we make this happen is very important, this co-creation between science, policy, government policy, and the private sector. So we need to have scientists working together with insurance, for example, to define the metrics and the indicators. And then we need the private sector to implement using real data, testing in pilots, and then we need the government to include those indicators in their planning, in their climate plans or in policies. So it needs to be co-created together. We need the precision and the credibility of the science. We need the legitimacy of the policy, the public sector, and we need the business, the private sector to give scalability. We need all three sectors working together.
Yeah, co-creation with, leveraging the asset of each industry or each actor is key. And I think you're right to say that it's an ecosystem issue rather than just, business private interaction. You also need to bring, customer and others.
Exactly.
To get back maybe to you, Alexandre, regarding Rada Verde. So how your initiative can help financial institutions to assess the risk associated to deforestation? Have you seen, more and more interest, from the financial sector to look at your tool and to deep dive and to understand, that deforestation is also linked to, as you shared before, the impact of the consumption we have of meat, of beef. So how do you foresee that?
There's a great question. Insurance companies are one of the largest investors in the world. So they can use this money wisely to help drive change, to help develop better monitoring systems within the financial system. Food companies in general are one of the largest part of the companies that provide shares and sell debt papers. And they are buying a ticket to a roller coaster on the coming years because of regulation, because of market criteria, because of climate change, because of supply chain failures. And if we look at those risks associated to production, like we have in Rada Verde, it's a way to avoid risk and to induce change, and it's a way to protect your money,
Yeah.
and a way to help to prioritize the best companies. This is a huge contribution that financial system and the insurance company can have.
Thank you. Moving to Rogerio, you mentioned insurance industry not being part yet to the initiative, in Brazil and to mobilize, the whole sector. You made your call to action. But I'd like to ask you, how can partnership with insurers and financial institutions help to scale preventive technology like yours by recognizing the economic value of avoided climate losses? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Bom, vamos lá. Acho que é importante destacar que
I believe it's important to highlight that the insurance will not avoid catastrophes, but allows reconstruction post-chaotic events. And when we have technology, and I believe we are talking about the paramount points, which is minimize risks, the maximum possible. So we are talking about fire risks. Just a second so I can check my notes here. As our technology can help minimize fire events for the agribusiness sector that loses several millions of reais with fires, as well as the environment and all projects, environmental projects that are focused in carbon credits and other credits, and there is no carbon credit if you have a fire in your land. So in terms of the environment, we cannot resume everything to carbon. And I bring a provocation here, knowing that insurance sector is a very traditional one and a very old one, as it was highlighted, one of the biggest investors in the world. I provoke the sector to look forward, because we are not talking yet about carbon insurance. We have to start talking about sustainability insurance, because most important than the carbon is biodiversity. And I have never heard about any initiative yet that would ensure the local biodiversity that we are talking about, because forest is carbon. It's not only trees. We cannot have a minimized view or limited view that we are protecting trees. No, we are protecting the existing biodiversity that will guarantee our existence. So I'm talking about focusing on items that will guarantee our subsistence, as well as car insurances that when a person loses her car or his car, they can recover that asset. And also on the same page as car insurances, when we have a car tracker, it's an item that minimizes the risk for robbery of that car. So I talk about our solution because here's where I have knowledge to talk about, but I know that there are more than 1,500 solutions in the platform that can be used also to minimize the environmental risks. Environmental risks do not belong to one company or to an individual. The environment belongs to all. So when we harm the entirety of our environment, we are actually damaging individuals. So crisis moments are the times to collect possibilities, and we are at a very important moment where this house in a COP is starting to look towards the new modalities for insurance. We have to look forward what is about to come, and if we continue moving too fast, there will be no insurance, there will be no assets to insure. So that's why we need technology. We can say about this because we have a great solution for fire. And I know that there are several entrepreneurs with solutions that are equally well done so that the insurance can minimize the risks and make the construction or the existence of insurance feasible.
Thank you. Thank you for your call again, your second call to action. I'd like to say that on the topic of biodiversity, there are more and more traction from the whole financial industry to tackle this and to find solution. I mean, I can talk on behalf of AXA, but also my fellow insurers. There is now more like sector initiative, which are about to be turning into more concrete action. So stay tuned to see what the insurance industry will offer, especially in Brazil and also elsewhere. But there is now more and more traction. But you're right, there is maybe a certain lag in terms of time to tackle, this topic and to be aware, of the consequences of not ensuring that. Any reaction maybe before we move to the last set of questions and the last part of the, do you want to react, any of you, on this?
Yes, I'd just like to add a couple of things, right? So just to give an example of what I was talking about, I was just yesterday talking to the people of Imaflora, which are a long-term partner here in Brazil, saying that a lot of the plant nurseries were destroyed now with the tornado that just hit Paraná, and they were not able to get insurance on those. So it, just to give you a concrete example in terms of how these assets, which are critical to all the reforestation and restoration agenda in Brazil, still do not have the capacity to be insured. Also, to give another example, inside the Nature Investment Lab, as I mentioned, these 5 businesses that we are deeply investigating and working on the financial structure, we are now, we have just published on the website, natureinvestmentlab.org, the 5 blueprints of those business models, where in each of them, we do a kind of a risk matrix to understand, because we're working together with BNDES to understand these different types of business models have similar ways to measure the risks, and how do we actually differentiate what is the landscape territorial risk versus the risks associated to the business model. So we're working together also with Instituto Igarapé, who created this great framework to understand the risks associated to geographic regions. So all of these materials, they have just been published and they're fresh to be used as resources on the Nature Investment Lab website. So yeah, just to give you these concrete examples.
Thank you very much, and I will look at it. Yes, Alexander, you want to react?
I would like to add something, if I may. I just mentioned what work we are doing with Chinese, but it's a huge work. We are having a lot of conversation with governmental institutions and companies there. They are worried because they have recognized, they have realized that the protection of Amazon forest is essential for their survival, because we produce their food. And if we lose the Amazon forest, we lose the capacity to produce food to feed China. And this is already happening. The raining from Amazon forest is already declining, and the capacity of producing food in Brazilian bread baskets is already declining, and our capacity to export to China is already declining. And they are seeing this, and they are helping by what they are doing. They are helping to develop better ways to monitor and to ask for deforestation-free products because of their safety. So they have already made that link, how they can, how to build safety by helping to protect the supply chain.
Yeah, I see the link directly to food security and continuing to basically have this capacity of Brazil to be the #1 exporter of meat, maybe for China, if it's the case. So I see that everything is interconnected. So we are talking about more generally about ecosystem, collaboration, and systemic change. And this is, for me, the last thing I'd like to discuss with you. So maybe Fernanda, you have been implementing effective nature-based solution for environmental disaster mitigation. What forms of collaboration do you see most effective in driving systematic change in the local Brazilian ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of, I just spoke before, just this co-creation between all the sectors. So it's fundamental to have science guiding, so translating this complex ecological data into maps that could be understood by anyone. Those are risk maps, opportunity maps. So it could guide implementers of nature-based solutions to effectively choose the areas where to restore or where to conserve. And then that's the first bridge between science and then the private sector. And of course, we need the financial sector as well. Like Daniel said, investing to close the bridge and make the nature-based solutions be implemented. And of course, always the government to transform that into policy and give a scale as well. So I think that's the best combination. I don't know if you agree with me, but I always see science at the beginning and then all the sectors working in a chain to make this happen.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is a perfect also opportunity for me to remind that science is not an opinion. So let's get back to, concrete things and physical, realities. Before concluding, Rogerio, as you were very vocal on calling the insurance sector to be more present and more proactive to support you, looking ahead to COP30 and beyond, what kind of collaboration between technology providers as you, insurers, and also policymakers, as mentioned by Fernanda and Daniel, is most needed now to build like consistent and systemic resilience and accelerate the climate transition from your point of view?
Thank you. I am a Buddhist by formation, and Buddhism has the principle of the phenomena interdependency. And phenomena happen interdependently, they interrelate. So all that we spoke here in this panel are connected. There is no sole solution, sole platform, sole measure, or unique segment that will solve the problems. What is necessary is to create channels where the entrepreneur for technology who is starting, he will have access to a test to validate his technology together with a big insurance company or a big operation company. Then he can scale fast. What we cannot not do, and I'm not here because I don't want to be the person who has the reason, it was hard. We struggled a lot through the 8 years to bring a technology that brings so much benefit and so much clarity to the environment. And if it was hard for us, I imagine to the other investors, because sometimes the effect is not so clear. It requires more thought to happen. So for me, the alternative that we have to think about is how to guarantee the application of the new technologies. I'm already 50 years old. I'm not a young person, but we have 25, 30-year-old people with brilliant ideas. They cannot fall in the common valley of venture capital that needs to have funding in order to scale. We have to test the resources of the insurance company so that they can model their business, and then in the right way, so then traction comes.
Thank you very much. If you want to, yes, Daniel, compliments, a last word?
No, just one last invitation for everyone here. So on the 13th now, there will be the investment COP big event and here in Belém, where we will have a 2-hour workshop with the Nature Investment Lab. As I mentioned, the Nature Investment Lab is an open platform for everyone that wants to put their hands on and help us advance that. We need the insurance support. We're working now with Agri3, trying to understand this. So if anyone wants to get engaged, I'll invite, it's an open event, Investment COP, Nature Investment Day on the 13th in the afternoon in the Assembleia Legislativa of Belém.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm putting out in my agenda. So we are reaching now the end of our panel. I'd like to thank again our 4 panelists for being present with us and share, this thought-provoking conversation and the feedback. So we have seen how green technology and insurance are working more and more together. They are central and critical to accelerate, the path, to achieving net zero I like to remind you a couple of also data that today we estimate that the green tech sector represents an investment of about 1 trillion. But there is still, if you want to follow the track, the trajectory of the net zero, path we set up as at COPs, we still need to invest by 2030 at least 1 trillion per year, meaning that we are still far from investing enough and supporting, as you all shared, all the solutions who are now getting into markets. They're not only POC, proof of concept, are now reaching out, customer clients. So this is also a call to action from, all stakeholders and also the finance industry to invest more and to fill the gap in the coming years. So thank you very much for attending this session. I'm pleased to have you all here. And yeah, thank you all. Please, guys.
Muito obrigado a todos vocês pela
Thank you
participação.
very much, everyone, for being part in this first panel. I'd like to remind you that today at 6 p.m. we have a cocktail. So we wait for all of you. Thank you. Okay, now following on with our program, we go on to the next panel, From Risk to Resilience, Insurances for the Preservation of Nature and the Protection of People. This panel will approach the social responsibility of the insurance sector in bringing protection to people and businesses, highlighting the relationship between environment conservation and climate resilience and the contributions of insurance to this agenda. So I invite onto the stage Melina Clotla, Chief Risk and Sustainability Officer from AXA. Please, let's give all our panelists a round of applause. Okay, we also have Paulo Atacho, member scientist from the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. Patricia Ellen, co-founder from Aya Earth Partners. Michael William Beck, Director of the Center for Coastal Climate Resistance. And Érico Rocha, General Coordinator for the Mitigation and Protection of the Ozone Layer from the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change. Once again, I'd like to remind you all that this session is transmitted live from CNseg on YouTube or through Casa do Seguro site. Great panel to everyone.
Good morning, good day to all. So I'm very pleased to be here with you on this distinguished panel that I have next to me. The idea of this panel, it's of course a continuation of what we started already yesterday. There is to discuss how the transformation of the insurance sector in climate-related topics is moving from a passive network to becoming a real transformation, driving to have equity, to have real transformation in how we tackle environmental topics. So that's a very interesting discussion, which I think all of us, all the insurance sector is really aligned on. So we don't, there is not much discrepancy there. We were really interested in bringing other voices as well. So not just to discuss amongst peers, but also to bring other voices. So that's the reason why I have this distinguished panel here. This panel is composed of scientists, it's composed of public sector representatives, and as well of AXA, Aya Earth Partners, which is an ecosystem that we are going to explain later on. So the idea of this panel is to go beyond what we do in our day-to-day, to really hear their voices and see how we can better coordinate to have a larger impact together. So let me please briefly introduce the panelists here. We have Dr. Mike Beck. Dr. Mike is the AXA chair in coastal resilience and director, and he's a former marine scientist at the Nature Conservancy. He's an expert in coastal resilience, marine conservation, and climate adaptation. And he's going to share with us, amongst other things, a very innovative insurance product that they have created in Mexico for Reef Coastal. So we are going to discuss about that. We also have the pleasure of having with us Dr. Paulo Artaxo, who is one of the most influential scientific voices in Brazil and in the world. He's a member of the Scientist Council of COP30. So very pleased to have you here. We also have Erico Rocha, who is our only representative here of the public sector. Very important to hear your voice as well. He's the general coordinator at the National Secretariat for Climate Change at the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of Brazil. And we also have the pleasure of having with us Patricia Ellen, who is a strategic advisor at AYA Earth Partners. It's a Brazil-based ecosystem created in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, in order to accelerate the transition to the commitments of the decarbonization in Brazil. So very pleased to have you here and to hear your voices. If you allow me, I will start by kicking one first question, maybe to Paulo. So I would like to hear your voice on how do you see the role of science in driving this climate adaptation and all these commitments that we have agreed on the past that we keep maintaining? So what's the role of science and how can we make it part of the discussions and not only an input, but really part of the discussions?
Eu vou falar em português, que eu acho que fica mais fácil para a
I'll speak
audiência.
Portuguese because I think it's easier. Well, the question is very complex because talking generically about adaptation, for example, you get in Brazil adapting the economy to society and to the social economical activities. In the Northeast, it's very different from the Amazon, from São Paulo, from the south of Brazil. So this is a very first important point. We need to have a structure where adaptation strategy is done by the local populations. This is the first important point. And now, adapting up to the last 10 COPs was out of the agenda. The focus was mitigation. But this COP is being different. In the action agenda, the ambassador Correa do Lago has included adaptation as a topic. So the main question, how are we going to do that? Due to the different instruments, economical instruments which are needed, the strategies and the capacities, and particularly of the different vulnerabilities that we have here for each sector, for each population. So it's not a trivial task, not an easy task, but we should have done that before, because the climate has already changed and it will continue changing in the future. So adapting is for today, for now. It's urgent. And this adaptation is not just for people. It is an adaptation for the ecosystems and for economy as a whole. Which activities, which economical activities are more sensitive to climate change? And how can we structure policies which are based on science, which is the focus of your question here, for each economic sector, for each population, and for each region? You see, we are amplifying, widening the scope a lot. And first important point, you have policies based on science. We can do public policies based on essentially two main lines. First, focused on companies' interests, or some economic sectors, or focused on the interest of the population. In the first one, you will favor certain economic groups, which is what we have been seeing, favoring the fossil fuel industries. But this gain in COP30, apparently, we will see in 2 weeks, this game is changing. You have also seen the President Lula declaring clearly that we need to implement strategies to gradually leave the dependence that we have on fossil fuels. This is an advance. I have followed the past 10 COPs. This is a very important advance. Well, adaptation is still a younger, let's say, newer theme. And to be honest, many people don't know how we are going to be able to adapt, mostly to some sectors which are more vulnerable than the others. For example, the insurance industry. I think it is doubtless that the insurance industry is one of the most vulnerable to extreme climate events. But it's not the only one. Agribusiness, Brazilian agribusiness, for example, with the reduction of the rain that we have been observing in Brazil, the center of Brazil, they will have difficulties to keep their profitability, their previsibility, which is critical for the agricultural insurance sector. And another point which is particularly worrisome is the life insurance, health insurances, because climate changes will certainly impact people's health in a very significant way. No one has a pocket solution with a recipe, of how this is going to be done. This has to be built along the following years in the interaction between the producing sector and society as a whole, so that we can increase the resilience of our society with regards to global climate change. This is extremely urgent. Otherwise, we will be just putting out fires, just like what happened in the south of Brazil, in Paraná, and which will happen more and more. So Brazil has to evolve. Brazil has to have contingency plans which are more and more adequate so that we can give the population the protection that the population needs. And considering the industry standpoint, the insurance industry, for example, we need to work on instruments which will give better stability, guarantee profitability, guarantee the stability of the system as a whole. All that is still valid for agribusiness, for power plants, which depend on rain, and so on and so forth. So, if you structure these policies based on science, you have a better chance of effectively attending to the needs of the population instead of just attending to the interests of one or other economic sector. This is what I had to say to you today. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I took a couple of highlights that I think are very, very interesting. First of all, when you mentioned the local population, okay, so it's really important to take them into account. The adaptation urgency, you are right, this is new. It's in all the media, in all the press, we read about that. Sometimes we didn't think it so much as per economic sector and how the science can really help develop solutions that are tailor-made for each economic sector. I like what you mentioned about public policy, the distinguish between should I put companies first, should I put population, or I need to do something more sustainable that's a real balance. Otherwise, it will never materialize into real action. I like when you mentioned about health. Usually when we talk about climate, we think more about material losses, not the loss of real assets and not our most valuable asset, that is our health and how this is impacting. And for sure, we need to deep dive better into this because the impacts are not so from one day to the other. When you have an hurricane, you see the impact the next day. When it's about health, it takes much longer to materialize. And even we don't even know that it's related to the climate change. So thank you very much. It was very inspirational. Let's move on. And also linking to the insurance, Mike, I would like to ask you, You were the pioneer in developing the world's first coral reef insurance policy in Mexico, insurance product in Mexico. So I have two questions for you. First one is, if you can please explain the audience what is this about, how does it work? And second question is, it has been a success. You can find it in the media. There are many articles about this. How can we take it one step further to really replicate it, or in other countries, or with other similar type of insurance as this successful one that you have pioneered?
Great, great. Good morning. It's very, very nice to see you. Very nice to be here. Thanks for the question. I wanted to show you just a couple of slides that give you some context for how we value this role of nature in protecting people and property. And then this provides some context for the insurance policy as well. What I first want to point to is some work that we've done in partnership with the industry, published just a couple of weeks ago, worked together with RMS Moody's to value the benefits of mangroves provided during hurricanes in the Moody's RMS model. So we do a lot of modeling. I'm going to show you a result of some of the very similar things that we do to the industry, but these values come straight out of the industry model, showing that mangroves during Hurricane Ian in Florida reduced damages by $1.4 billion. Really significantly. And in just one county alone, Collier County, reduced damages by $67 million annually. So a very significant protection of property. And we know how to do that within industry models, to put those benefits on and to identify where those benefits are most important. So those deepest blue areas in the path of Hurricane Ian show the properties that benefited the most on the right side of that hurricane. It also shows the area in crosshatches that if you build in front of mangroves, that is, in front of your defenses, your risk goes up because they're effectively blocking water. So that's very important results coming out of industry models. What I also want to say is then we've been taking this same kind of research and applying these models to understand risks throughout the Caribbean and for most small island developing states. And I'll show you a QR code at the end for all three of the slides where you can pick up the results. But this will give you some sense of what we do. We take those risk models and then we're able to assess flood risk with and without coral reefs and with climate change, compare those across countrysides like we're doing here in Barbados. And we're able to put these results of the kind of models we all work on into game engine technology to be able to visualize better some of the hard work that we have all done together. So this gives you kind of some context of how that works. And then for all of these areas across the Caribbean, we actually calculate the social and economic damages, the risks, and the benefits provided by those habitats. The last thing that I want to point to is then we take those values and we work together with the industry, for example, on reef insurance. So we find ways to be able to pay out after hurricanes to quickly work to repair reefs. But even more broadly, we've talked a lot in previous years about mitigation credits. That is the credits for doing things like restoring wetlands that will reduce future risks to people, property, and nature. Am I getting the hook? Almost done, I swear.
No, you have time.
But what we're then trying to say is that we should be applying this same sort of thinking to adaptation credits. That is for restoring wetlands that reduce risks to people, property, and nature now. And together, we know how to calculate those benefits. We know how to assess risk We know how to assess risk reduction actions. We've done this globally for mangroves, and I show you the results for Belém here, which gives you some idea of the credits that one could get for restoring wetlands that reduce floods to people and property. And this is the last slide. If you take a photo of this, you can then catch up later with the websites as well as the paper. And I really appreciate the opportunity to cover those things.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mike. So I think it's very inspirational. I don't know how you see it. It's not the traditional way we do insurance. Here, our insurer is the nature. So we are really protecting nature. We are doing in an efficient mode because it's parametric. So the simple occurrence of an event, we don't need to assume how much impact it's going to have. We can really pay out and compensate for the damage done. And again, thank you for bringing the topic of adaptation and how you bring the scientific eye into concrete solutions. So continuing with insurance and how it can really contribute to these challenging targets that we have set to ourselves. Eriko, you're a representative here of public sector. We are really keen on having your voice in many of the topics that we will discuss. Coming back to insurance, no? How do you think, or which innovative solutions, such as the one that Dr. Maish has presented, we can leverage to promote sustainable land and prevent forest deforestation, especially in the Amazon, that is when you specialize? Do you have some ideas? Have you been able to discuss it with the private sector? I would like to hear your voice on that.
Bom dia a todas e todos. Eu também vou aproveitar
Well, good morning, everyone. I will speak Portuguese since there is a possibility here. So it's excellent to be able to speak Portuguese here in Brazil. And I think the previous speeches regarding science give us an interesting background. I think that's it. This sampling from this slide shows how the insurance sector can pressify. You can pressify risk. You can actually calculate cost. In the perspective of the public policy, can knows how to induce the private market. We have to think of the insurance sector not just as a capable sector, but also as a sector that is capable of inducing the market. And I think what we have seen in this data here for coral reefs is really important. We have been looking at deforestation in the Amazon. First of all, public policies. We have to think about what we can deliver, which is the climate plan. We have taken part in debates. So first of all, we need strategies. We have mitigation, adaptation. So to have it clear what we want for each sector. And then we want also to reduce the symmetry of information. We have other platforms to generate information with granularity on many aspects so that you can help private decisions. And this data, we have a lot of data showing how the standing forest is an asset because it generates not just the reduction of disasters, protection of biodiversity, but it also widens agricultural productivity. So we could think about that related to the problem of deforestation. Together with the different ministries in the government, we have discussed about the maintenance of the forest, reduction of the deforestation. So how can we keep what we already have? So we have data that standing forest widens the scope of production, the improvement of water. You could have a discount in the price of the insurance for a producer that would keep the standing forest. So the policy for credits and the policy for insurance, they could also work hand in hand. So we have some policies to help these producers keep the forest standing, and will help them in, why not think about discounts for this specific situation. So first of all, considering deforestation in the Amazon, the difficulty that we have is how we pressify and how we include this value to be able to detail it. So as a first reflection, this would be my points.
Thank you very much, Rico. Your voice is really appreciated. You mentioned data. That's a key asset to really start developing products. And we also need the scientific view, because I think it was mentioned yesterday, the data from the past is not really reflecting how things are evolving. So the possibility to work with it and to share data is clearly an asset that we should leverage on. So thank you both for bringing some perspectives on how the insurance can help in our commitments. Patricia, coming to you. So Patricia, as we mentioned before, you are a strategic advisor to AXA Earth Partners, which is an ecosystem which main purpose is to accelerate the climate transition and decarbonization. So I would like to hear your voice, because you probably work with many stakeholders. I assume also insurance, public sector, private sector, regulators. So what's your point of view on how we can make this transition more equitable? No? That the benefit actors are not only the ones that can afford to buy an insurance, but really to go beyond that and to acknowledging that the most vulnerable population are usually not protected by some of the policies or the facilities that we have. What's your point of view on how we can drive it into having even higher impact by covering a more wider scope of population?
Thank you for the question, Marina. Thank you for the invitation to CNseg. I saw Luciana here. I'd like to thank you for inviting us. I will follow my fellow Brazilian friends here and I'll switch to Portuguese just because we are in Belém. And I'm very happy to have this COP in Brazil and in Belém. Para responder tua pergunta pouquinho só.
To answer your questions, nowadays I am a co-founder of AXA Earth, but I'm a president of Systemic in Latin America and AXA Institute, where we have done a lot of work promoting partnerships, public-private sector, around sustainability, adaptation, and transformation. We have led a task force to help the private sector with the agenda of green economy and ecological transformation and climate adaptation, showing the financial benefits and agreeing with Professor Paulo Tashi here, studying the work that is being done. The data has to be by sector, by region, and besides that, we need to have a closer and simpler look to the impact of the lives of the people, because the most vulnerable suffer the impact. So with the presidency of COP, you are invited. We will launch the global report to be able to show climate adaptation. So some points that I would like to mention. First of all, we are bringing the objectives, DDA, of the global goals for adaptation. And they are being defined now in the negotiation one. And together with that, for Climate Adaptation Fund, we are discussing the theme. This is one of the main ones in the COP. And we have the journey where we define the amount for emerging countries, but there is the adaptation fund. The debate is about 300 billion, but we show in this that the minimum number that we need is 350 billion. So we need to adjust these numbers. But together with that, higher participation of the private sector, because nowadays almost 90% come from the public sector. So we have these two important adjustments in scale.
A gente tem aumentado muito os gastos com adaptação climática devido ao aumento de eventos extremos. Então, esse é
to
o
the
segundo
increase
ponto aqui.
and due to the
O dado para
events.
2023,
So the data for
os exemplos,
2026
120
is
bilhões de dólares
$120 billion on global
por
losses were
seguradoras,
covered
né,
by
que a gente
insurance
chama ali, mas
companies.
tem o que a gente chama de
And
protection
also,
gap,
we
que
have
é
the protection
esse
gap,
vazio aqui
which
de
is
cobertura, que
this bottleneck that we have, and 2/3 of the losses, around $250 billion, were not covered. So today we have this point from the one size companies need the coverage, and on the other side we have this gap that needs to be worked, and therefore we need the partnership of public-private companies, and that's the third data I will arise. So CNseg has covered very well, and the point here is on the state of Rio Grande do Sul, which was one of the largest catastrophe learnings we had. The coverage generated 1.7 billion reais in indemnities, and there were some losses that were not foreseen in the coverage, and we had to work at the public sector in an emergency way. And on the other side, we have agribusiness, which is impacted by climate events, and we have this same issue on coverage. We estimate that in Brazil, we had more than $60 billion losses in the agro sector that are not being covered. Only 1 billion, thinking about the loss that we are currently having for soybean and corn on the increase of external events. And just to close your question, today we are having losses after losses that could be avoided, and major impact are on people who are the most vulnerable ones. And I will say that if we can change this into opportunities on emerging countries, and we will talk about them on the report the day after tomorrow, we can include 280 million people creating opportunities inclusively for work and income for those people. But in order for this to happen, the $350 billion should be invested in a way that is a constant and strategic way, sector by sector. So in our report, we have the value, the regions, and the sectors. And obviously, when we talk about health, infrastructure, and agricultural sectors, these are the three most important sectors for these investments. And the way to invest has to happen through public-private partnerships, leveraging technological possibilities. Brazil is a major case for leveraging in some sectors. We have one of the most advanced finance sectors in the world. We have the PIX, which is automated. We have also digital identities that some countries don't have. We have a unified public health system, and now we also have the digital identity and PIX, as I said. And for other developed countries, this is not obvious, and for us it is. And what don't we do with that? We don't leverage in the concession on public-private sectors. So the ones who invest abroad keeps the return. The majority of the adaptation return is for reduction of costs and losses and optimization of that. We don't have this integrator. What is the return besides 280 million people that can be included? We prove in the report that it varies from sector to sector, but for each dollar that is invested, we recover $4. And in terms of internal return tax, an average tax is 25%. WRI published a report that if we put all this together, for each invested dollar, we can have $10 in total. But now we need structures, technological ones, and concession models. Well, before, I am a former technology director in the state of São Paulo, and we drew concessions in a different way that allowed insurance could be realized. And there was a change in one line mainly in the highways that draw objectives for resilience and other points, so we can direct a fund for that. And this is an example that happened in the state of São Paulo, and we can replicate throughout the country, both on a state level or a national level. And to end, there's two examples that Érico said about the Ministry of Environment. I believe that TFFF is the most important instrument to think about the resilience for the future, but they have to think as well as a resilience, adaptation, and climate justice tool, because it gives resources for countries with tropical forests and creates an inclusion model for the population so that these forests are preserved. The majority of these disasters were caused by deforestation and climate changes caused by human interference. So if we create an incentive and the population is there in the front line, maybe this is the major insurance to be created at this COP today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was very, very good insights. You mentioned protection gap as a bottleneck. I fully agree. I also might acknowledge that I see initiatives, I really see initiatives and in private companies and also the private sector trying to reduce this gap. It has to be systemic. No, I think individual actors, it's very difficult to have a real impact, especially in a country like Brazil. No? So I think it was very, very important when you mentioned about climate justice. It also resonates a lot, and all the metrics that you have provided about how much attention we need to put to this topic. Thank you. So Paulo, so continuing about vulnerable communities, and maybe more specific about the area that you manage the best, about the Amazons. How do you see that we need to take actions to really protect these communities in the Amazon region?
Yeah, todos viram os impactos da seca.
You have all seen the impact of the drought of the year 2023, where millions of municipalities were totally isolated without access to food, water, medication, and so far. These events will increase. They will increase in intensity and they will increase in frequency. And Brazil is decades away in the run to serve the necessities of these vulnerable populations. And when we talk about Amazon population, are the ones that we know in the urban centers, but what about the indigenous people? The indigenous people who are isolated, that with the droughts basically won't have drinkable water or food. What is the impact that this is causing to the indigenous people? And this Brazil must take care of. It's a moral point to protect the originated people from the Amazon and also protect a lot of the economic systems that sustain or support Amazon, mainly in the south of Amazon, and they are related to agribusiness. And agribusiness definitely is one of the economic sectors that is the most vulnerable ones due to climate change. So if we don't make a framework for the agribusiness to adapt, we will have difficulties. We don't need to be too smart to notice that. Of course, this is a complex issue because simultaneously, while they are one of the responsible for the deforestation of the Amazon, the Brazilian economy also lies on the export of commodities. So we will have to balance the protection of this industry, adaptation strategies that are smart and efficient so that we can keep the economic activities to offer a life with dignity for the 30 million people who live in the region of Amazon. So these points are on our table. Several solutions are being proposed at this COP. We see pilot studies that are paramount, but there is one detail that I see in the way that several successful pilot studies act, the scaling up capacity. These good examples, it's very hard to get this example. So if I have a society or a community that succeeded, but that's a community of only 5,000 people, and how can you expand the successful acts to 30 million people in the Amazon? We don't know yet how to do that, and science needs to work a lot to get the regional actions, because the Amazon is also different in terms of territory. What works in Acre may not work in the south of the Amazon. So these are local actions. Science needs to study the feasibility of these activities and mainly make them feasible to be implemented as public policies jointly with the private sector.
Thank you very much. Again, very inspirational. You mentioned the frequency and the severity of these events will certainly increase. I think nobody is doubting about that. You mentioned the indigenous population. Of course, maybe they are not on the top of the target clients when we develop or public policy or financial products, but you mentioned very clearly this is a key pillar of our economy as well, on the national economy, on the exports. And you mentioned something related to what I mentioned before about the escalation. So we can design very successful programs or the financial solution that target 5,000 people. Okay, that's still very small to make it a huge impact. And the need of the science and technology to really boost this, and that we will not be working individually on low-scale projects, but really to come to the next step. So thank you very much on that. So Mike, I think I still have a question for you related to what you mentioned before about this very innovative insurance solution for the coral reef. And also talking about scalability and replication. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in every area in which we have this type of risks. So how do you see this as a next step of this project? Do you see that we can replicate it in other regions? Do you think, how can we make it bigger without having to redo all the work that you and your team have done already?
Right. Well, I appreciate that question. So a couple of things. One, together we have been expanding the model in a few geographies. So there's about 4 or 5 reef sites. So there, we show that we can replicate this model. And there's the beginning of some of those similar insurances for mangroves. What I do want to note is the kind of like the 2 biggest challenges in expanding work together on nature-based solutions. Because if we're going to work on nature-based solutions, you're trying to merge conservation interests with risk reduction or adaptation interests. So on the conservation side, I worked 20 years in a conservation organization, and I can say that some of the actors standing in the way of doing work on ecosystems to protect people and property are environmentalists. They were not ready to change their practices. They're used to protecting ecosystems away from people, as we said, not near people. So you're then asking them to change their practices to work on more damaged ecosystems in front of a lot more people and property. That was a huge change for them, and they're still struggling with it. I worked for a couple of decades to try to make that change, and it's happening. Okay, that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin that I want to point to is the risk industry, because here's the problem that I face in some of this work, and I want to be very clear. I have an AXA chair. I consider myself a friend of the industry. I appreciate the work that we're doing together, and so I want to challenge you to do more. The industry talks a good game on resilience and adaptation. Some things are really happening. There's really important work that you're doing, but there's so much more that I believe that we could be doing together. And in the first instance, that includes valuing the benefits of nature for risk reduction. For some systems like wetlands, it's not that hard. Reefs is actually hard for the industry. I can explain that later why. Wetlands is not. So not incorporating wetlands into your risk models right now hugely limits what you can do in nature-based adaptation, because you won't work on what you don't value. So I issue a challenge to be more proactive in this regard, because actually it's not that hard.
Thank you. It resonates to me. You won't work on what you don't value. It's very true. It's very true. Thank you for bringing this distinguish between conservation and risk reduction and the challenges that you have experienced throughout your career in making sometimes the transition or the link between the two. Thank you very much. And to move forward, Erico, I think I also have a pending question to you, because we talk a lot about the interaction between the public and the private sector, the need to work together to really make this scalable and impactful. I have a question to you. What is missing in this relationship between the private and the public sector? How can we make it in the next couple of years? I'm not talking 20 years ahead of now. I mean, what part of the conversation is not efficient enough to really drive the change that we need, according to your point of view?
Obrigado pela pergunta, excelente. Eu só vou me permitir aqui fazer uma
Excellent question. I will just point a reminder about the valuing benefits of the nature. I'm an economist. I work with that for several years. So we are talking about externality. We are used to the contributor who pays, the ones that are polluting, and we are the ones that Brazil. The amount of forest explains variability on the production of soy, and 52% of the productivity in a drought year. Also, the coverage for forests and the amount that is minimum and necessary, 26%. So in terms of information, internalization of positive points, and this allows the advancement of public and private partnerships. And then I have some specific points here. Another data that I do believe is relevant, thinking about public policies, we have a tax system for the construction of the Brazilian NDC. I was part of this project, and we did work on modeling with Roberto Schaffer's professor from the University of Rio de Janeiro. We have several points on emissions. The reduction of deforestation is the most effective way to reach climate objectives. And we have another point, which is restoration of the native vegetation. So we discuss solutions that have been applied in developed countries such as dike. And here we have the tree that not only captures carbon, but benefits the ecosystem. And another specific possibility, we can think about rural credit. We talked about the two sides of the coin, but agriculture needs the forest, but it is impacted by deforestation. And the second point is a public-private partnership. And as an example, I participated at CNseg panel. While extreme climate events happen in Brazil, we have a reduction of the insured area in Brazil on 20% until 24. So this is 7% of the national crop. So I'm talking about how we can advance in terms of action, amplification, and the panorama.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's good to hear your voice. sometimes we discuss a lot amongst the private sector and hearing to your voice and how information and concrete data can drive better these discussions about the tax system that you mentioned. I think it's critical and it's probably one of the key drivers that we can play with. Based on your experience for the rest of the panel, I leave it open. Do you think there is an area of this interaction between scientific, public, and private sector that could be more efficient with quite simple actions in the short term?
I think bom, vou voltar para português. Acho que a transformação
I
ecológica,
think the ecological transformation and the change that we have mapped as priorities, they are a clear example of a union among science, public and private sectors, working together to make this change possible. The time is up. So what happens is we need to understand that most of it happens in the use of the land. The best application of science is understanding the use of land, how we restore, how we produce, and how we protect. A little bit of this balance that we have to try to find. What makes me optimistic, which is in Brazil, it is the fact that we can make it viable, involving areas which create this optimal equation. If we can think of two examples, nature-based solutions, and bioenergy, and we become a leader. For example, in the aviation, Brazil has been very famous for Embraer. The new version of Embraer is to have here the best producers of bioenergy through BioSAF, so that we can be the best producers of this type of fuels in the world. If we can have the opportunity of reaching 30% of the global production in the ecological transformation, we prove that Brazil can double their GDP. SAF alone brings an opportunity of $40–50 billion a year. So this is the biggest economic opportunity, biggest technological innovations, and which involves the use of the soil. Because of the 7 technological routes, one of them starts in Macauba production, and it is a reintroduction of this forest type of tree. Of course, it takes a while. The peak of production starts among 5 or 7 years after it's been planted, but it is an original plant from the Brazilian forest where we can combine Macauba and cocoa as well. I told Minister Paulo Teixeira that we had to have a project of agro systems to produce agrofuels, let's say. So when we get the two things together, we can produce, protect, and create great technological innovations, including people in this equation. Cocoa that I gave an example, it's $10,000 a ton. Last year, we beat the record in terms of price, and it's a product that might disappear from the African West, and Brazil has a great opportunity to become again the biggest world producer as it has been in recent past. And now half of the production happens in Pará. And so I gave a concrete example to your question that we get scientific innovation, uses the best that there is in agro and creates a system of agro feeding system connected to bioenergy that rethinks the use of the soil in a more strategic way. Is this happening nowadays? No, not yet. But the areas where we are producing cocoa are different from the areas where Macauba is being planted. The biggest project for Macauba is in the north of Minas Gerais and also in Bahia. near Salvador, and in the meetings with the producers, can't we try to get closer to cocoa, because cocoa is in Ilhéus. So as we reforest, we can create other concepts. So Pará, Bahia, Minas are in this context, because all the other technological routes are corn, soya, sugarcane. We can use also cooking oil, but nowadays we have some work to do with Europe for them to recognize what bioenergy is. We have to prove that food production does not compete with energy production. So for that, we need data. And we have to separate the agro that deforests from the one which doesn't, so that we can create a traceability model of this production so that it is recognized in the international market. So this for me is a practical example. If we sow BioSAF, I think we will answer in practice the question that you have asked, creating a model that produces, includes, and protects.
I would just add, so one of the areas where I think that there's real opportunity for science, business, policy, and practice to be working together is on the advancement of adaptation credits. And I think that this really would bring what the industry knows about how to measure risk and the risk reduction benefits of actions with their investment arms, who actually understand how we could make these work at scale to protect nature in ways that would have maximum impact on people and property. It is completely doable. It is within our power to work on these things, within our remits to do it. So I would say, I hope we can work on that together.
Thank you very much to both of you. These are very concrete and good examples of this collaboration. I think also events like this and this type of discussions in which we bring all the parties together are really helping in driving openness and to set the expectation for the other sectors. So I think with that we can conclude, unless you have any other comment. Thank you very much for your time and preparation, and I hope you have enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Muito obrigado aos participantes e à AXA pela construção desses dois.
Thank you for the construction of these two excellent panels which we have had this morning. At the end of the day, there will be a cocktail being offered by AXA, and you are all invited. It will be at 6 p.m. Okay, I would like to thank as well all the empowerers of Casa do Seguro, AXA, Allianz, BB Insurance, Bradesco Insurance, Caixa Seguridade, Mafre, Marsh McLennan, Prudential, Porto, and Tokyo Marine. Now we will have a break for lunch, and we'll be back again at 1:30. Have a great lunch. Thank you.